On a hot summer night in 1988, Jane Borowski was stabbed 27 times by an unknown man. She was 7 months pregnant.
My name is Jane Borowski. I survived, and I remember everything.
Jane is the lone survivor of the Valley Killer, who prowled the borderland of Vermont and New Hampshire and murdered at least 8 other women. I'm your host, Jennifer Amell, and this is Dark Valley. Jane and I didn't set out to solve this, but in the course of a 2-year investigation, this happened.
The police aren't going to be happy with me sharing this, but it's not about secrets anymore. It's not about hiding. And connecting this person not only to my sister's murder, but to the other murders as well.
Join the search for America's unknown serial killer. Listen and subscribe to Dark Valley, out now.
I've always thought that the stories I would hear when visiting my grandparents sounded so much creepier than the ones at my own home. The things that go on in the story we'll hear today encompass that very same feeling. My name is Edwin, and here is Lourdes' true scary story.
This house, the stories in this house goes back since my dad was a child. It's a 2-story house in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon. It's one of the bigger houses that is on the block. My grandma, they moved there when my dad was a very young boy. He was a baby. It used to be to where they had a deposito in the front end of the house, and then they lived in the back end of the house. My grandma would always tell us when I was young that there was spirits in this house. She would say, "Hay espíritus en esta casa." They want young kids. She would tell us that the spirits would offer her money that was hidden in the house for the soul of her young kids. She would always say, if you ever come across any spirit, I don't know if I can curse, but mándalos a su madre. Just tell them off. Don't give them that satisfaction. Don't let them in. Don't give them that power. Even now, like if my kids say something, "Oh, Mom, I heard this," I always tell them, don't give them that energy or don't give them your power. Don't knock back or anything like that. They always say, if you hear a knock, not to knock back. I always tell my kids that because I believe in the spirit world, in God, the good and evil, it's there. When I was young, in Monterrey, in this house, they didn't have AC back when I was a little girl. We would sit on the terrace, on the terraza, and we would sit in the middle of the night. We would wake up, we would be hot. We would sit and rock on the rocking chairs. We cooled off a little and we got sleepy and we would go back to bed. The first thing that I remember was my mom. She was pregnant with my sister. I was 6 or 7 years old. She sent me downstairs to get an icicle, one of those sabalitos, I guess is what they call them. I went down there. My grandma came into the room and she was like, "Oh, ¿dónde está Alex?" My mom was like, "Oh, she went downstairs to get us some icicles, some popsicles." My grandma runs downstairs and she grabs me. She doesn't say anything to me. And I was like, "Oh, hola, abuelita." I was just getting, some icicles for my mom and me because we were hot. Oh, okay. She grabbed me. She took me upstairs. My mom, she told me that my grandma grabbed her from the arm. And this was her mother-in-law. It wasn't like her mom. It was her mother-in-law. She grabbed her from the arm. She's like, "Nunca la dejes ir. Don't ever let her go back downstairs by herself. Don't you know that there's spirits in this house that will take her away?" My mom was weirded out because she had never heard of this. Never, since then, she would never let me go. She stopped letting me go down to get sabalitos if we would wake up in the middle of the night hot. She would be like, "No, don't do that." That was the first time that my mom told me afterwards, like, "Oh, your grandma said this. Let's listen to her and not go downstairs." She didn't know what to do. She didn't blow it off either. My mom, she grew up Catholic. She also believed in the spirit world. She never saw it. It was a see to believe kind of thing. She was a regular grandma and abuelita. She would always take us to the market, to the mercado when I was little. And she died when I was 14 years old, 13 or 14. So I was younger, but I'm the one who was closest to her out of my sisters because they were young. I got to kind of enjoy her more. We would go places and do things. She was very Catholic. She obviously believed in spirits. I don't know if she dabbled in any witchcraft or anything like that because I never saw anything. My grandma had these ceramic dogs. This never happened to me, but she would always tell us stories that these dogs would roam around the house in the middle of the night sometimes, chasing off spirits. That's why she had them there. Every time that I would walk by these dogs, I would run across from them. When I would get close, I was scared of these dogs that she had. Years later, I asked my aunt what happened to the dogs, and she's like, oh, one day they just cracked and broke out of nowhere. They just crumbled. We threw them away. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's weird. In this same house, in another room, this was in my grandma's room that we would stay in because she had the terrace, so it was fresh. Every time we would go, she would let us sleep in her room. It was the most comfortable room because of the fresh air, windows and all that. I was talking to my dad yesterday about it, and he was like, oh yeah, that bed in your grandma's room used to move, used to shake. We would never sleep in that bed. She had a couch, a pull-out couch. That's where my mom and me would sleep. That bed itself moved and shook. He has felt it because he would sleep there. He talked to his sister, and his sister was like, ¿Verdad que se mueve? Right? It does move. It does move. It feels like someone's looking at you through the closet. Before, the closet just had curtains. It didn't have a door. It just had these soft curtains that you would close to close off the closet. He says that when he would sleep in that bed, it was directly next to the closet, and you could feel like something looking at you from the closet. I never experienced that. I was telling my dad, he was kind of reminding me of all these things that have happened at that house. Where my grandpa used to sleep, which was across from where my grandma's room was, I used to play in that room and I never saw anything. My sister, my little sister, she swears that she saw an Indian with Indian-style garb looking at her. But my dad says that when he was little, he also saw that same Indian. She was just like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? She was little. She was 7 or 8 years old. My sister's kind of open to all these things. She has seen things when this happened. It was in the middle of the night. Her and my other sister, which is 18 months older than her, they were sleeping in the same bedroom when she saw this. When she was telling the story, she's like, oh, I saw an Indian. And my dad was like, what? I saw that same exact Indian. She described him. And my dad was like, I saw that same exact thing. All of us have different things that we have experienced or that we have seen. My mom has personal stories that have happened to her. She has had experiences through different things that she has acquired or purchased. She started hearing things in her ear, murmuring. Years later, she went to Merida and she felt a breeze come through her. She said that for 2 nights, she couldn't sleep. She was hearing murmuring and all kinds of weird things. She's like, the only way it went away is I put my headphones in and I started listening to Christian music. I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I was so scared. I would wake up your dad in the middle of the night. Come with me to the bathroom. And my dad was like, no, go by yourself. It's right there. She was like, no, I'm scared. I can't. I'm really, really scared. My dad had to accompany her to the bathroom. She was sitting there just freaked out. This was in Merida that happened. She said that there were these mansions. They're all abandoned. Nobody lives there, but they're so pretty. I stood there and I was just looking at them, admiring their beauty and wondering why they were abandoned. And all of a sudden, this whoosh came through me. I got chills. And I started walking faster towards your dad because they kind of left her behind because she stood there looking at them. After that, that's when she heard all the weird murmuring. The way she describes it is like a roaring in her ear right next to her ear. It was weird. We've never looked into it. I've never gotten my cards read. I've never done any of that. I've never done the Ouija board, any of that. I don't even want to open that door. No freaking way. I don't want to go there. I've always been taught from a little kid to stay away from it because it opens doors that you don't want opened or that you don't need opened. So I've always been like, no, we don't need to mess with that world.
Up until now, we have heard of the peculiar events that would happen at that house. But now, Lourdes is about to have an encounter, and her story continues right after this. Stay with us. I'll be showing you a new show we're working on with Michelle from Scary Mystery Surprise. It's a creepy voicemail show called Tell Me a Ghost Story, where you get to drop in your stories, campfire style. I'll play the clip right now.
There's a new podcast in town. That's right. Michelle from Scary Mystery Surprise has a new project coming out on Scary FM, and it's called Tell Me a Ghost Story with Michelle Newman. Tell Me a Ghost Story with Michelle Newman. The late night call-in podcast where we delve into the world of the supernatural and explore the eerie and unexplained. This podcast features true stories from our callers that will send shivers down your spine and leave you questioning the existence of the afterlife. So grab a cozy blanket, turn down the lights, and dial 1-701-484-2666. Dial 1-701-484-2666. And tell me a ghost story. Hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts.
Fast forward a few years, I was about 13, 14 years old. We were all sleeping in the same bed. Since I was the oldest, I had to sleep at the edge of the bed. My sister was in the middle. Then my little baby sister was against the wall. I guess hierarchy made me sleep on the edge of the bed. And I wear glasses. I remember putting my glasses on and saying, I'm going to keep my glasses on because if I see anything, I don't want it to be blurry. I was falling asleep. I felt my glasses get hit off of my face a little bit to the side. I fixed them. It took me a second to realize what happened, and I was like, wait a minute. I opened my eyes, and I'm like, did that really just happen? What in the world? I'm just laying there. Then I feel pressure as if somebody's standing over me on the bed. I feel pressure on both sides of me. Then I feel the pressure jump off, and then I just hear like running off, pitter patter. This was where the deposito or that store used to be. Once my grandma passed away, and my uncle moved out of there and he moved his deposito somewhere else, that front room, since it was downstairs, became my grandpa's room. He was older and his bedroom originally was upstairs, but because he was older and ailing, they moved his room downstairs and he used to have a rocking chair. When I felt that, he had already passed away maybe 2 or 3 years. He didn't die there, but it was the same bed that he would sleep in, the same rocking chair. It was his room. We would stay there. Sometimes they say that they would see that rocking chair rocking on its own. I never saw that, but my experience was having my glasses hit off and then that pressure and then hearing running. It freaked me out. I was so scared. I scoot in closer to my sisters. I just remember being scared and being like, I don't know if I really just felt that, if I really just heard that, if I was asleep, if I was dreaming. I don't think that I was. I just scoot over closer to my sisters and just tried my best to go back to sleep. I didn't want to get up and investigate. I wasn't about to do that. I think around the same weekend, we would all sit in the dining room area From the dining room area, if you were sitting on the certain side, you can see towards the stairs. We were all sitting there. This, I think, was 2 days after my initial thing. I only told my sisters and my dad. I didn't say anything to anybody. My aunt was visiting from Tijuana. We were all there chatting it up. My back was towards the stairs. I couldn't see the stairs. My dad, my aunt, and my sister saw somebody go upstairs. My dad says that he thought it was my uncle who lived there who went upstairs. And my sister looked at my aunt and she's like, "Oh, did you see that?" My dad was like, "Yeah," after they saw that he wasn't upstairs. And they were like, "Who just went upstairs? Because I saw somebody go upstairs." Nobody's upstairs. My other aunt, my sister, and my dad kind of all looked at each other. They were like, "Are you sure? We just saw somebody go up the stairs." My dad ran up there, looked around, and he's like, "No, nobody's up there." He describes it was a person with a sleeveless shirt, a white beater type shirt with dark pants that he saw go up the stairs. My aunt, who lives there, and she still lives there now, she was like, "Oh, sometimes we see that, somebody going up the stairs and there's nobody up there." We don't know who it was, but from the description, it sounds like maybe my grandpa's spirit. He would always go upstairs when he was younger. He would go upstairs and would read those old school novels. He would always have one in his front pocket. I think he was 93 when he died. He was born in 1911, but he swears that he was born before that because back in the day in the rancho, you wouldn't get a birth certificate until the kid was 2 years old. We don't know exactly like how old, but his birth certificate says 1911. He passed away, I think, in 1999 or 2000. I don't know, but he was older. He was up there, and he always grew up in the ranch, in el rancho. And my dad has weird stories about the rancho. He heard whistling, and he would freak us out when he would tell us these stories. We would all get together and be like, Dad, tell the story about the guy with the this and that, all kinds of stuff. My mom at that time was just freaked out in general. She was just really scared. It wasn't even like so much the bathroom thing. It was just being alone. She was scared and freaked out. And this has happened to her twice when she bought some things from a lady at a garage sale that everybody knew. Supposedly, this lady was into witchcraft and brujeria. It didn't just happen to my mom. It happened to other people who purchased things from this person. Those things, I guess, had an attachment. I was little when that happened. She didn't tell us anything till we were older. She had that whole experience with that whooshing, that air that went through her. And then she said that she felt the same exact thing. She's like, I've only felt that 2 times in my life. She was scared. My daddy is always like, hi, Lulu. He doesn't get scared or it doesn't freak him out. He's always like kind of blew it off. I mean, I just can go on and on with stories that I have heard. Right now is my aunt, Silvia. She lives there, and her husband, and I think one of her kids, she said that they had a puppy, a little cachorrito. She had him for a week or 2, and then all of a sudden, one morning, we couldn't find, the puppy anywhere. And then my husband, Elias, found like a trail of blood, and he was like, well, where is the puppy? Did he hurt himself? The trail of blood ended at the door, and the door was locked. It's one of those old school metal doors that you have to pull the latch open and then pull it open, like the old school Mexico door. It's heavy. Then they found the dog in the backyard, like a courtyard kind of area. That's where they found the puppy. He was dead. They were like, oh, lo encontramos todo desgarrado. That's what she said. Lo encontramos todo desgarrado. And they don't know, no sabemos cómo se salió or what happened. She's like, the door was locked. We found the dog ripped up outside of the house in the back. Everything was locked. That was a weird story that she told us maybe a year and a half ago. I'm sure she has seen things or heard things. When my aunt was a baby, they had just moved into this house, maybe in the late 40s, early 50s. My grandma woke up because she heard crying. She nudged my grandpa and she was like, Erasmo, Erasmo. It was his turn to get up. She got up and she's like, la niña no está en su cuna. The baby's not in her crib. What are you talking about? My grandma was like, what? They followed the cries and the baby was outside in the courtyard. They grabbed the baby. They were freaked out. This is why my grandma says that they offered her money that was buried and they would tell her where it was if she would give the souls or the babies to them. This is why years later, when I was little and I went downstairs to get the sabalitos, my grandma was very stern and she was like, ¿Que no sabes que hay espíritus en esta casa? And that stems from back then when they originally bought that house. This has been going on for a very, very long time. Since my dad was a baby, since my dad was little and they bought that house. I don't know, I think maybe the house itself, or maybe before the land that the house sits on, or that area, maybe, I don't want to say a portal, but maybe there's just spirits that come in and out of that house, or maybe it's trapped energy. I don't know. My grandma, she used to have this room at the top of the stairs that was like chicheria room, just a bunch of junk, organized junk, but it was just a room that nobody would sleep in. It was all full of stuff. And it was always freaky to go in there. Whenever they would tell us, oh, ve al cuarto de arriba, the storage room, we would always run in there and get whatever, run out. I don't know why. It was always weird, freaky feeling room. We didn't want to be in there. I think my aunt still uses it as like a storage room, but it's like a full-blown bedroom. You know, like it's big enough, but it's always been a storage room since I was a little girl. It's never been a room that people sleep in. Maybe my grandma knew something. She would always tell us, just don't even pay attention to them. If you ever see anything, tell them off. I always tell my kids that even now, like, if you hear anything or see anything, tell them that entity does not belong here and that you are not allowing him to possess you or take your... I don't know if maybe that's why we're protected in a sense, because I've always had that inclination to always say no, no, no. I've never been open. I've never wanted to be open because I don't trust that. I just feel like if you open yourself to those things, then they're like, let's get in there. I don't know. It's just weird. We built that house. It was a 2-story. Sometimes I was downstairs and would hear like if somebody jumped off the bed upstairs. One time I was by myself and I heard a door slam upstairs. And again, I did not go investigate. I just kind of blew it off. I'm not about to find out anything. I don't need to find out anything. I am not that person. And my husband's always telling me, oh, we should go do this, or he has a ghost radar on his phone, which I don't know if it works. He asks questions and I'm just like, don't get me involved.
Tell your own story over at truescarystory.com. The link is in the description of this episode. To listen without ads and support the show, try out Scary Plus. You can find it on scaryplus.com or on the Apple Podcast app. You can also check out the rest of our other shows by looking up Scary FM on your podcast app. Thank you very much for listening. See you soon.